which happened last time. Okay. Anyone has any quick questions or comments before we start? We just have 2-3 minutes still. And am I audible? So just let me know accordingly.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess we'll start. It's 5 a.m. So thank you everybody for joining. We have almost 20 people, and it's a nice, thank you for taking time out on a Sunday and sharing. So essentially, this is how we will go. And I try to keep all my presentations with minimal technical stuff, because the idea really is to make sure that everybody has understood it entirely, hopefully without jargon or jitters. And please feel free, as I've always said, to message me in case there are any questions you want me to address. This is what we had spoken about last time. We had spoken about blockchain overview and potential, which was my presentation. And Rehan and Zishan spoke about the practical aspects of cryptocurrency investments from Vancouver. Zishan couldn't join us today, so he just messaged me a few hours back saying he couldn't join. But Rehan is there as usual, very reliable and highly trusted in terms of my workings with him. So this is what we had covered in the past session, and for people who were not there, it was quite a heavy technical session, and some people told me it was a masterclass in blockchain technology. And so there were about almost 350 plus slides. So I've taken a few of these slides just to demonstrate what we had covered. So first was this, where we said that a blockchain is essentially a chain of very secure, write once only data lockers. And these data lockers are all available for global viewing, via the internet. We actually spoke about how these data blocks were chained together, and we could store all kinds of data on the block. You could store data about anything that you are interested in from an enterprise point of view. But essentially, money, which is what is stored, which is the Bitcoin blockchain network. Then we had actually looked at the linking of the concepts which I had spoken about with an actual block, which was, we had taken a block from blockchain.com, where we had mapped the concepts which I had spoken in terms of the actual data which is represented on the blockchain. And a key takeaway is that what Bitcoin does is it solves the double spending problem, because digital goods, unlike money, can be easily copied. I send you a file, you can send it to 100 people, I will not come to know. So what Bitcoin using the blockchain technology had done was, it is able to prevent this kind of a problem. And I have given reference to the paper over here. This is the original paper of Satoshi Nakamoto, which is on bitcoin.org/bitcoin.pdf. It's a very tough technical read. It's an 8-page document, but whenever you get the time, just have a look at it. And I periodically try and read the paper from time to time to understand where the actual implementation of blockchain and Bitcoin is today in terms of what the original promise was. When I had made the presentation in June 2020, that time the price of Bitcoin was $9,000 plus. The market cap was $170 billion. And I said that this market cap is literally a sitting target for global hackers. And when we say global hackers, I'm not talking about the guy sitting in a room trying to hack. I'm also talking about institutional hacking armies. There are certain countries in the world who have institutional hacking armies whose only job is to hack Bitcoin. But no one has so far succeeded in hacking Bitcoin. That makes it the strongest, part of the strongest link. And I'll cover a bit of it later with something which happened last week, which not many people have brought notice to in India. So these were the main 3-4 slides. I could have actually taken much more, but I said, let me keep it simple. This was Rehan and Zishan's slide where they covered introduction to cryptocurrency and the practical aspects of investing in cryptocurrency. And both Rehan and Zishan are very comfortable with both Bitcoins and Ethereum. Ethereum is also a cryptocurrency, and which is invented by the Canadian programmer, which Rehan was referring to earlier, called Vitalik Buterin, one of the smartest guys in the world. So today's session, as I said, was supposed to be investing in Bitcoin from an Indian perspective. However, two things changed. One negative, one positive. The negative was that India has brought about or is bringing about a proposed cryptocurrency bill. And the positive aspect has been the global momentum, as I mentioned. So we will cover these two. We will only focus on these two topics today, and any other questions that you have. I have received 3-4 questions before the session started, so I'll address those. I think they are quite critical in understanding, what the Bitcoin phenomenon is all about. Okay, so there are two things the bill proposes to do. This is the 2021 bill. Mind you, this bill was supposed to be tabled in Parliament in the current ongoing session of Parliament. But I believe as of yesterday, they have said that they are going to seek wider consultation, and they will probably introduce it in the monsoon session of Parliament, but this news is not confirmed. So this does two things. This basically seeks to ban private cryptocurrencies. And the second thing it does is it allows only those required to promote blockchain technology with ties to RBI. Somebody's sound is coming. Can I request you to be on mute? There's someone whose sound is coming, please. Yeah. So essentially, it does two things. It says, I will first ban private cryptocurrencies. And the second thing it says is, we will only allow those cryptocurrencies which are linked to RBI's blockchain technology. Okay. There are two problems with this. I have highlighted those. The first is the word ban. How do you ban a cryptocurrency? How do you ban Bitcoin? Can I bring in a law which will have every Havaldar coming into everybody's house and asking you to open your laptop and open your open your phone and see whether you have a Bitcoin client? So that is the first problem. The second problem is private. What is the meaning of private? So these are two problems which legal experts have highlighted, and we'll talk a bit about this. I'll try and address some questions related to this. The other thing which I've highlighted is with ties to RBI. RBI, as all of you know, is India's central bank. So the concept is that sovereigns all over the world, notably China to start with, US also recently, are coming out with their own versions of digital currencies, which are called as CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. So for instance, you have one second. Yeah, you have CBDC, which is what the logo which I have shown you is for the digital yuan or the digital renminbi, which is the Chinese digital currency. 3 days back, the Fed, I think the US Treasury Secretary has said that the digital dollar is a high priority for the Fed. So this is again a central bank digital currency which is going to be issued apparently by the US government. But there is an elephant in the room. I don't know whether many of us are aware. The elephant in the room is Facebook's Libra project. Libra project is also a kind of a digital currency which Facebook wants to issue. As all of us are aware, Facebook is one of the most powerful organizations on earth, and the utilization of artificial intelligence technologies and other technologies is very, very sophisticated. So my initial understanding a couple of months back was that the US would leverage Facebook's Libra to bring it as a competition to the digital yuan. But 2-3 days back, as the news was that the Fed is now coming out with their own digital dollar. But who knows? Ultimately, Facebook is a US corporation and it is answerable to the US decision makers. So the good news, cryptocurrency bill may not be tabled in the current parliament session. And the fine print over here says that it is seeking further consultations with experts as to what should be the bill. Let me just quickly highlight 2-3 things what the bill wants to do. I have not put it in slides. First is the draft of the bill has not been published, but there is a bill which is a bill of 2019, I think, and that bill said that essentially no Indian could invest in cryptocurrencies. Number one. Number two, it said that to those who had invested have to sell all their cryptocurrencies within a period of 90 days. And number three, it said that all the people who have bought cryptocurrencies essentially have to pay a tax on the same. Now, taxation is a very crucial aspect in India, and the figures, there are two kinds of taxes. One is the income tax, where the figures range from between 33 to 42% of if you invest in Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency on the capital gains that you have made. There is a slight complication over here. Some countries are thinking of even talking about unrealized capital gains, which means that you declare that you have so and so cryptocurrency, and even though you have not sold it, you give a value to the government as on 31st March which is the end date of our financial year, and then you have to pay a tax on that. So that is one part of the problem. The second is that the government has said that they will bring in a GST. GST is a goods and services tax, where the taxation rate in India ranges from, let's say, 2.5% GST on gold to, let's say, 28% if you buy a car. Now again, here the problem is government going to tax GST on the value of the Bitcoin that you have, or is it going to tax it on the fees which are charged to you by the exchange? Again, there are no clear-cut answers over here. See, one of the problems which the government is looking at, and which was mentioned by the Honorable Minister of State Anurag Thakur. He said that, look, a Bitcoin is neither a currency, nor is it a security, nor is it a commodity. Now in India, we have different sets of rules for these different categories of assets. So maybe the government will probably try and bring in a harmonized law which covers security, currency, as well as a commodity. So maybe this is what we are planning. We really don't know. But the good news, as I said, is that they plan to do it in the next session of Parliament. Why have I said it is not good for India? So what is at stake? There was a tweet by one of the critics of the government 2 days back. He said there was a job application for 67 peons. Now, Rehan may not know what a peon is. A peon is essentially an assistant in a government department whose job is to move papers from one department to the other. It's the lowest rung of the hierarchy. So in Uttar Pradesh, which is one of India's largest states with a population which is more than some of the countries of the world, 3,700 PhDs, 28,000 postgraduates and 50,000 graduates applied for 67 peon posts. So this is a big, you can imagine if somebody wants, a security in 67 jobs, you have almost 100,000 very highly qualified people, from graduates to postgraduates to to doctors who applied for these kind of jobs. One can imagine what kind of a job crisis India is facing, I mean, just people who may not be aware, we need to create 1 million jobs per month for the next decade, if we really have to take care of our population. So this is one problem, because what will happen if India goes ahead with the ban on cryptocurrencies? You have today in India 1 million plus cryptocurrency investors. These are investors who have invested both through the official exchanges. There are a few official cryptocurrency exchanges, as well as people who have invested unofficially. You have almost 10,000 crore plus of cryptocurrency investments. Some people say it could be as high as $2 billion, which is 15,000 crores approximately. There are 300 plus startups who are working in this area. See, let's understand, cryptocurrency is essentially a technology focused game. A person who understands software deeply understands cryptocurrency or can understand cryptocurrency well. So you have these startups who are doing cutting edge work for some of the most sophisticated multinationals in the world. There are millions of freelancers and developers, YouTube content creators, copywriters, artists who would like to get paid in Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. There are experts. For instance, there's a gentleman called Balaji Srinivasan, who is one of the most reputed investors in Silicon Valley. He's written very two nice notes for the government, saying that two things. First, he says that the government should buy Bitcoin to the extent of $5 billion and become a powerhouse which can withstand pressure both from China's digital currency on one hand, and the US digital dollar on the other hand. He says that India should support Bitcoin and create a kind of a non-aligned movement. And with the vaccine diplomacy which the Honorable Prime Minister is doing, where we are shipping vaccines free of cost to very many countries all over the world. He says India should take up a leadership position. And with our base of, India has 1 million software developers today. We can create, we should not get cut out from what he says is the financial internet, because tomorrow's internet will be blockchain based. Today government is facing a lot of problems from Twitter, Facebook, in terms of their power. Twitter was able to stop the US President Trump from speaking out. So that is because Twitter knows the identity of Trump when he logs into his Twitter account. But imagine if there is a Twitter which is developed on cryptocurrency, which has nobody else, using crypto technology. No central government or a central entity like a Twitter managing director is able to control it. So the next wave of innovation will come from what we call as a decentralized internet technologies, of which blockchain technology is a great example. To the credit of the government, just to clarify, the Reserve Bank governor did clarify that even though we are looking at banning of private cryptocurrencies, we do want to promote blockchain technology. See, the biggest fear the government has is in terms of the sovereign function of printing money. They feel that if a private currency like Bitcoin is encouraged, it will take away a lot of investment from rupee and take it out of the area of control of the government. There's something in people who understand economics know what is called as M1, M2, which are money supply parameters. How much money RBI, for instance, releases to the banks and so on. Very important. If you ban Bitcoin, probably you will have it could be constitutional violations. For instance, right to property, right to profession. These are two of the rights which are given to us, to Indians, by the Constitution. And people say that we will miss out on the next big global opportunity, which is really to create the next $3 or $4 trillion of value. In the early 2000s, I had met Arun Kumar, who was the managing director of a company called Hughes Capital. They were a very big US company. They were doing software work from India, and he was from IIT, and unfortunately he died. But he had told me, he said, if you were in the US, let's say in the late 90s or the late 80s, he said there was so much desperation for software services. You could walk into any company and they would just, they would give you, they would just give you contracts left, right, and center. See, interestingly, today we are in the same opportunity, because if you see COVID, what has COVID done? COVID has, accelerated the digital adoption by companies since the last 8 to 9 months. Things which people had said will happen after 5 to 10 years in terms of digitization have happened in the last 6 to 9 months. You look at the business which is coming the way of all software, large software export companies from India. I mean, people are desperate today to digitize their operations. So my reading is that even if the government brings out this bill, and maybe they might bring out a softer version of what they had planned. See, finally, one good thing about this government is that they are very conscious of public opinion. So if, let's assuming they come out with the bill and the bill gets bill goes to court. By the time the court matter gets decided, it will be anyway 6 9 months to 12 months or 15 months. By that time, the next round of elections will happen in India. So we are everybody is hoping that they do not do this, because see, what is the government really worried about? I think those worries can be addressed by today, for instance, India has this centralized depository system where any Indian investor who invests in shares and mutual funds, there are 2 or 3 centralized depositories, where you can create your depository account. So the government knows who is investing. Idea has been given to the government that the industry will do the software for you free of cost, and we will create a cryptocurrency investment kind of a registry. So you do your AML, advanced your anti-money laundering, you do your KYC, know your customer regulations, and you make sure that whoever is investing only through these through these channels. So let us see. And last point, when I go to my barber, when a cricket match is on, the only thing they are talking about is betting, how much Dhoni will make. So in India, we have a state like Gujarat, which has banned liquor. I was doing a project in Porbandar many years ago. I wrote the software for 2 of the largest marine seafood exporters in India, and I can tell you, Porbandar is supposed to be the birthplace of our father of our nation. And after 7:30 p.m. at night, the doors get closed. Everybody opens their liquor. Most of the people open their liquor. Everything is available, even though it's prohibited. Same goes with online betting. Same goes with online gambling. Every cricket match, there are millions and millions of people who bet on it. So I mean, the purpose will not get solved. Government will lose revenues, and the revenues are quite significant, as we said. So hopefully this is at stake. The call to action here is, one of India's cryptocurrency exchanges called as WazirX has started this movement. There is a URL called indiawantscrypto.net, where they will you fill in a form, and the form will get emailed to your member of parliament. India has about 540 Lok Sabha members. So I plan to do that in the coming week, and I will also be speaking to our cooperator, our local municipal cooperator, as well as our local MLA, that maybe we should see, because what really happens is the people who don't understand cryptocurrencies spread what we call as FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So essentially, they need to be educated. And once you educate someone who understands what this technology can do for India's masses, I'll just give a simple example. Yesterday, one of my boys who works at home came and told me, "Sir, meko account. I want to open an account with State Bank of India." I said, "Fine." I said, "What do you have?" He said, I have a Aadhaar, but I don't have a PAN card. They are asking for a PAN card. And he's going to his village on the 9th of March. I said, "Why do you want to open a bank account?" He says, "Because when I carry cash in the train, the security guards who are there, who work for the railways, they know exactly that we are carrying money because we are going back from Bombay." And one of my earlier boys, he used to spend 2-3 nights before. He would put money in his toothpastes. He would hide money in his shoes. So he said, they come and they take away all your money. But just imagine, forget us, forget people who are fortunate like you and me, who can listen in our air conditioned and rooms, and we can probably listen to a Zoom call. Imagine the people. Imagine what a currency or a technology which can send money from one point to the other at least costs can do, which Bitcoin has a promise. So we are hoping that government will see some action. they will see some reasoning and probably, avoid taking any drastic actions. So I will continue with the next part, which is the global Bitcoin momentum. So everybody knows this. Elon Musk, who probably is the only person on earth today who's running four $500 billion potential companies. He decided that he wants to invest in Bitcoin, and he did actually three things. The first thing he did was he said our corporate treasury, which is the money, the cash which he has, I think they have about $19 billion of cash on their balance sheet. He said we will invest $1.5 billion in Bitcoin. That is the first thing he did. The second thing he said was we will accept Bitcoin as currency. So essentially, the people who are asking the question, fine, what will Bitcoin finally be used for? Is it only a store of value or can I use it for something? He answered that question. And the third part is the figure of $1.5 billion is not, it's almost equal to Indian cryptocurrency's entire holders. See the investment in Bitcoin. Let's understand one thing. The US laws are very, very strict. The minute there is a problem, you will have the US lawyers and they will go after him. So anyone in the US and he is not the only one who has actually understood what the risk entails and still have gone ahead and done it, I think they know what they are talking about. And just for information, many people don't know this. His software guys wrote a bot. A bot is a software program which runs automatically. So what they did was they tracked the price of Bitcoin, which is highly volatile as all of us know. And they were following the price trend and they were only buying when there were downward trends. So it was not a random, push the button buy today kind of a decision. It was done through an AI, probably an AI software. Elon Musk also has an AI company called OpenAI, which does AI software free of cost for the world. So this I think was the most significant development which happened earlier this month. And with the result, what has happened is institutional support is coming to Bitcoin. See, this is a very interesting chart. If you see, the chart goes from Jan 2017 till October 2020. The blue line shows the Google search trends in Bitcoin. The orange line shows the Bitcoin price. So if you see the right side of the chart today, there is a huge disconnect between these two lines, which means that retail, if you see the first part of the chart, the Bitcoin price and the Google search trend are roughly in sync, which people have analyzed that retail investors who were searching for Bitcoin earlier, let's say in 2017, were the ones who were buying Bitcoin. Because Google search trends accumulate by volume. I could be one person sitting individually, I could be searching. I could have Elon Musk sitting in his room, but Elon Musk represents $1.5 billion of cash. So what has happened, if you see the right side of the chart, the analysis, and this has been done from, I got it from two independent sources, is that Bitcoin price is getting disconnected from Google search trends, which means two things. The average Bitcoin purchase is becoming larger and larger, number one. And number two, as we saw in the case of Elon Musk's purchase, there is automated buying happening of Bitcoin. See, there are global exchanges where today I can automatically buy Bitcoin. I can say, okay, if the price drops by 20% in 2 hours, buy 5%. If the price jumps by 30% in 4 days, sell 2%. I can do all this kind of programming very easily even today. As I mentioned, this was a Forbes source. And the third thing, this has not got much attention, and this has got huge, according to me, huge strategic implications. Feb 22nd, the US Treasury Secretary gave a warning about Bitcoin. She said it's an extremely inefficient mechanism. Guess what happened 2 days later? The federal system, the US Federal Reserve System, which was being used by the US banks to send money to each other, that system went down for almost 9 hours. People who understand the US, how the US intelligence works, this is something which is very, very strange. And to me, the timing science sounds very, very odd, because look, it happening in a matter of 48 hours from her warning. You can't make this up. This has actually happened. From our point of view, India, things get even more curious. What happened? Our NSE system went down. Feb 25th, our NSE system was down, and I believe a lot of people who are into future and options trading. What am I trying to say? I'm not trying to say that these things are connected. Maybe, who knows, these could be connected, because let's remember one more thing. 2 days back, one of India's richest billionaire, there was a car full of explosives found below his house, and more ominous was a message which went along with that car, which said that, look, we can do this again. Somebody is trying to send a message. Maybe I'm trying to connect the dots. I'll come back to that a bit later. What is the point I'm trying to make over here? The point I'm trying to make over here is, this is the Bitcoin statistics which I downloaded yesterday. Since the Bitcoin network started on Jan 3rd, 2009, its uptime, this is a word we use in computer hardware. Uptime, we call it as 99.9861. We call it as a 9 nines. So if you see the decimal points over here are there are 10 decimal points. So we call a network as reliable if it can satisfy the 9 problems, 5 nines. Those are the levels of network reliability. So the number of days since Bitcoin has been down is almost 2,910 days. So if somebody wanted to send a message to Yellen, Treasury Secretary Yellen, saying that, listen, you can talk whatever you want about we being inefficient, but we were able to take down your system, your Fed system, and our network is still up. I'm not trying to create conspiracy theories here, but let's understand one very important point which was told by one of the ex-Trump officials. See, as everybody is aware, today 60 to 65% of the world's Bitcoin mining happens in China. But because Bitcoin mining is a decentralized network, the minute China tries to put influence on their miners, and they are doing it in certain ways, what will happen is, the network itself, which is outside China, will make up for that kind of a lacuna. But let's not ignore the fact. Coming back to the point about what I was talking about, the National Stock Exchange. See, I don't know whether they will be able to come out with what actually happened, but let me tell you from a hardware, I have a computer hardware background. The routers that we use in our homes for internet functioning or in our companies, in most 99% of the corporates, the routers are pre-installed. The IT person, the CTO or the CIO doesn't change the default configuration. 1 month back, Microsoft was hacked very badly. There was a hack, it was called, I think, the SpyWinds hack or SolarWinds hack. And what the reason was that the default configuration software which comes with these routers or any piece of device you handle, you install in your company, if it doesn't get changed by your IT people, the chances of it being hacked are very, very strong. So let's not dig further into this, but this is something which I thought was very significant and which did not get any press as far as India is concerned. This simultaneous going down of the Fed exchange and the National Stock Exchange within a matter of 2 days after the US Treasury Secretary made her comments. So I received a couple of questions. I'll address those quickly right now. The first one was one of my friends who's a doctor in in North Carolina sent me this message saying that, look, Bitcoin is crashing right now, but it may create an entry point for those with an appetite for risk. So as I showed you earlier, this was the price of Bitcoin as on 26th June 2020. I have taken this date because it was there in my last presentation I made to use. This figure was taken from Rehan's presentation he made on 3rd Jan. The price was $29,500, and this was on 3rd Jan. the market cap of Bitcoin was 741 USD billion. And this I have shown you is a monthly variation chart. So as we all know, it's a very highly volatile asset. And but look at the long-term gap. Look at the long-term trend of Bitcoin. I believe even today, before I started the presentation, it was about 44,000 odd dollars. And but if one draws a long-term trend, I think people who want to invest have to be ready to stomach the extreme volatilities which happen in this cryptocurrency. Two further questions I got. Is Bitcoin similar to gold as a safe haven? Number one. And number two, what prevents the technological entity that manages Bitcoin from manipulating the system for its own benefit? Both are good questions. So, and the third question was, how liquid are the cryptocurrencies compared to stocks and the other investment options around? So I'll quickly address these questions. So Bitcoin versus gold. Samir Arora, who is a very respected commentator on CNBC, I hugely respect his expertise. He is an anti-Bitcoin person. So a few days back, he posted this tweet which said that people who were earlier buying gold, why have they stopped buying gold right now? What is the problem? Why earlier people were saying buy gold as an it's a hedge against inflation, it's a hedge against falling stock prices. So just one second. Yeah. So I tweeted back to him saying that try selling a gold necklace in Mumbai's Zaveri Bazaar. A layperson would be shocked by the price variance by the so-called valuation experts there. Could make one lose faith in humanity, even considering that business margins. And my last point was gold is an impure asset as compared to Bitcoin. A few months back, one of my relatives had come to Bombay and she wanted to surprise her husband and buy him something. So she said, I have an old necklace, I want to sell it. So me, my wife and we went to Zaveri Bazaar and we visited around 4 to 6 of the top, valuation. There are 2-3 companies over there who do valuation on the spot. And believe me, it was shocking. We got a range right from 45,000 rupees to 1.4 lakh rupees, all in the span of, 1.2 lakh rupees, all in the span of one afternoon. And yesterday I saw that Zaveri Bazaar handles, almost 60% of India's gold. They do almost 900 crores of business every day. So when you look at an asset like that, which you don't understand. So what Samir replied to me, he said, yes, if you make it into a necklace, sure. He agreed saying that, yes, if you make it into a necklace, you have a problem. To which I responded to him, yes, 80% of the world's gold gets used for making jewelry. And I have challenged this to all the ladies whom I know who like to invest in gold, saying that when you walk into a party, and can you find out whether the other lady is wearing genuine gold or a fake gold or a mix of both types. Point I'm trying to make is Bitcoin as an asset class has mathematics as its fundamental foundation, which gold doesn't have. So the purity in Bitcoin is determined by the correctness of the algorithms which allow one to mine Bitcoin. But on a personal note, my Bitcoin versus gold battle continues in terms of convincing my wife. On Dhanteras Day, 4 years back, I told her, let's buy Bitcoin. She said, no, it's too complicated to break my head. Why don't you buy it? So the point is that it is an asset, but people who are bullish about Bitcoin versus gold say that currently today $10 trillion of gold investment has happened in the world, and I think the Bitcoin investment is slightly less than $1 trillion. So they say even if Bitcoin is able to double or triple the investment from the current point, one is talking about price movements which are 2x, 3x. See, the point is not that. The point is vis-a-vis gold, it has got certain advantages. It doesn't have the laws of limitations of physics of gold. To store a bar of gold, I need security. I need a physical place. Bitcoin being a digital asset doesn't have any physical requirements. I can transmit this Bitcoin to anywhere in the world. I can't do the same with gold. As I mentioned to you in my last call about a friend's wife who was humiliated at Mumbai airport, she was searched by the customs officer without proper COVID precautions because they got a suspicion that she was visiting her son frequently in Dubai, and they said, no, we want to check you. So this was one point in terms of Bitcoin versus gold. And just one second, yeah. Second question, so the point, is Bitcoin similar to gold? Yes, it has got certain characteristics as gold. But see, gold has been around for almost what, 2000 years? Bitcoin has been around for 10 years. So, one has to take that into perspective. Second point, second question, what prevents manipulation of Bitcoin? I mentioned that in my last presentation, you need to control 51% of the blockchain network within a period of 10 minutes. And let me add one more figure over here. The current estimate is that you will need mining equipment to the extent of almost $5 billion, 5 billion, to be able to have a network, have control of the Bitcoin network within 10 minutes. That is one. The second question was, who can stop the manipulation? Because this is an open source software. As I mentioned, if I have to download Bitcoin, the blockchain network on my computer, it starts downloading right from the block 0, which was the first block which was created by Satoshi Nakamoto. And it takes probably, depending on my internet speed, it takes 3 to 4 days for the entire blockchain network. My computer has to be connected to the network. It takes 3 to 4 days for the entire blockchain network to get replicated on my computer. So it's a replicated network, which obviously makes it tamper-proof. How liquid are the cryptocurrencies compared to stocks and other investment options around? I was surprised to know this. There are almost 80 countries, 80 plus countries in the world which have Bitcoin ATMs. So these are all the countries which have Bitcoin ATMs. So these were the questions I had, and I stop here. And there are some chat questions which have come, so I will address those. But before that, does anybody have any questions? Please, most welcome to ask. Any questions so far? So I'll take the the question which I've got from the chat. First question is from Ashish Bagri. He says, what should be the best course for crypto investors in case there is a ban? I understand that there are 3 options. Sell everything is the first option, number 1. Number 2 is give it to someone outside India and take it from them later in fiat currency minus taxes that will end up paying. Third, move towards self-custody wallets and wait for the ban to lift. Are there more options? Okay, the first option that you said is sell everything. Now see, the point here is, how do I sell it to someone who's outside India? When I trade on the Bitcoin exchange, I cannot tell the screen to only show me those investors who are staying outside India. It's practically impossible. Unless I go outside India, I meet a friend and I say, okay, or I communicate with someone. Because see, even when you say, when the government says we are going to ban selling of cryptocurrency, it means you cannot sell it to an Indian. It has to be sold to a person who's outside India. So that is the first problem in terms of the practical issue. Second is give it to someone outside India and take it from them later in fiat currency, minus taxes that you will end up paying. Sure, you could do that. Third is move towards self-custody wallets and wait for the ban to lift. I mean, look, I would not advocate doing anything which is illegal. So, see, people have said that even if India goes and ahead and bans it today, like Balaji Srinivasan has said, even if you ban cryptocurrency today, you will be forced to reverse the ban a few years later down the line, because in fact, people have said that a lot of these startups will move to Singapore or Dubai or Estonia, some of these jurisdictions. People will go jurisdiction shopping, go to the best place. See, nobody can stop talent from coming today. Every country in the world wants talent to come into their jurisdiction. So I would not advise to do anything which is illegal. What I feel immediately, practically, let's say that if the government decides to go ahead with the ban, I think there will be a legal challenge, which will take anywhere from 6 months to 12 months, depending on because see, there are two routes by which the government can bring this into a bill. First is through an ordinance route, which bypasses Parliament completely, and another is through a Parliament route, which is the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. The question Ashish had was, are there more options? The only option I will suggest is, I will say is, wait it out if you have it. Don't do any panic selling. Yes, you do carry the risk that if you have bought through an Indian exchange, they have your data with you, and some point down the line, the government will ask them to release the data to them. So that is the problem. That is the option available to you. Okay, Varsha has said that, can you explain mining and why bitcoins can't be produced endlessly? See, mining, as we had discussed quite in detail in the last presentation, which I don't want to take it right now, because it will involve another 40-45 minutes. Maybe we can do when we do the next session of blockchain basics, we can cover it. The second question that you have is why bitcoins can't be produced endlessly, because the software doesn't allow it. See, Bitcoin is a software driven algorithmic process. The software says that only 21 million bitcoins will be produced. Yes, there is a fear that tomorrow the Chinese government may go and put a gun on the heads of the miners and say, listen, you guys have to start producing more bitcoins. But what will happen is there is something called as a fork, F-O-R-K. Because it's a block, it's a chain. The chain can go off in a separate direction, but that will not be the original Bitcoin. So the algorithmic restrictions today do not allow Bitcoin to be produced endlessly. Okay, I hope I have answered that question. Somebody is asking a question about gold bonds. What about gold bonds? See, gold bond is nothing but physical holding of the gold in a demat account, in a dematerialized accounts. In fact, as you see, last 3 to 6 months, the prices of both gold and gold bonds have been coming down. So it is just a way of holding gold instead of holding it in. So instead of holding it in, let's say, a physical gold, which is supposed to be pure, the government will guarantee that you can buy gold which is of a certain carats, and you don't get the physical gold. It is just an instrument that you have. Someone has asked a question: in what currency do Bitcoin's ATM dispense? I think it would be the local currency. So in the US, it would be US dollar. In Canada, it would be the Canadian dollar. In Singapore, it will be the Singapore dollar. Rajesh has asked a question about what's the view on other cryptocurrencies. See, there are many cryptocurrencies. The only one which I am fairly familiar in technical terms is Bitcoin to a large extent, and Ethereum to a slightly less extent. Can I ask Rehan to answer this question? Rehan, would you like to talk about the other cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, see, there is many different cryptocurrencies available. Like as you mentioned, right now I think there's over 1,000 cryptocurrencies, or 2,000 actually. And the main thing is each cryptocurrency will solve a traditional problem. That's what it seeks to solve. So, for example, Maersk Shipping Line, they have two cryptocurrencies that they're using called 300 qubit and a TU token to solve two main issues in their industry, which is the double booking of containers and last minute cancellation of clients. So it really depends on which industry is coming out and which cryptocurrency is targeting it. And if they decide to solve, like another example is Wabi. Wabi solves counterfeit item problems, and it's pretty famous. It's pretty like adapted in China, Taiwan, and Korea. So like a lot of baby formula is counterfeited. So what happens is they keep track of the chain management from the start to the finish to the end user, and it comes out as a QR code. So if you go to the store, you can just scan the QR code and it will come up on your phone saying it's authenticated or it's a real product. And that's how cryptocurrency is trying to solve these problems. So with other cryptocurrencies, there's really great projects out there. It just really depends on the due diligence you're ready to take to study this project. And it really affects on the person's subjective view, right? Like if you feel strongly about, like Mahesh sir was talking about his someone around him who was getting robbed at the train stations for his money. So now if you have a cryptocurrency that solves that issue or targets to help ease that issue, then a lot of people will be solely emotionally attached to that cryptocurrency. So it really depends on the areas and where you want to target.
Yeah, Rehan, there is a follow-up question from Rajesh. I'll read it out to you. He says, currently I'm mining Pi cryptocurrency by Stanford PhDs with almost 1.2 plus million miners. This currency is still not on crypto exchanges. So I'm wondering whether a particular cryptocurrency has any value or not. Are you familiar with the Pi cryptocurrency?
Yes, I am. And what happens with, this is what happens with mining different types of cryptocurrencies at small cap coins. So there will be cryptocurrencies, they need to prove themselves to the crypto space. So once this thing starts to actually prove, what I mean by prove is like every cryptocurrency will have a roadmap to establish validity and accredit display. They have to follow that roadmap and actually post out updates and show us what they're doing and things like that. So currently, I don't know so many areas that accept what you are saying with that currency, that Pi mining currency. But what happens is you can always convert it. So there's other softwares out there that right away what you are making, you can convert it right away to Bitcoin, or you can convert it to Ethereum, or you can trade it for a different currency. It's not always on the exchange, but there's dedicated software that is just there. It's meant for a switch. It's a swapping feature. So put Bitcoin, swap it to whatever else, or put Pi, swap it to Bitcoin. And that is always available.
Okay. There was a question on quantum computing. Can quantum computers not be able to hack Bitcoin since the Bitcoin technology has not changed in 2009? This is a great question. See, quantum computing, Google's Sundar Pichai had made a statement last year that Google already has a quantum computer, and they see that in 5 to 8 years time, the current encryption will break. Okay, now what does this mean? There are three implications of this. The first implication is that, as I had mentioned in my last presentation, the private key of a Bitcoin, which controls your assets on the blockchain network. The space, the total number of keys is a figure which is 10 raised to 77, which is more than the number of atoms in the entire observable universe. So yes, today there are estimates that if a quantum computer starts hacking into the blockchain network, it is quite possible, let's say within 2 years or 3 years of continuous running. Some people have said it can happen within 15 minutes. So that is assuming, of course, assuming that the technology is not changed. But there are a lot of technological developments which are happening on the Bitcoin blockchain network, which will prevent this kind of thing to happen. But yes, see, nobody knows how technology develops. The other important question which people have asked is, if a quantum computer is available, will will breaking the blockchain network be its biggest priority? Actually, no, because if you see, every state, whether it is China or India, has a large amount of their state secrets which are held up in their own encryption schemes. So tomorrow, I'm sure an enemy state would like to control India's nuclear assets. which I'm sure are controlled through a public key encryption scheme, and take control of that rather than going after an asset which is probably 5 billion or 10 billion or 15 billion dollars. As I had mentioned last time, Satoshi Nakamoto, his Bitcoin is as the originator, his Bitcoin holdings are estimated to be in billions of dollars today. So his Bitcoin is actually most vulnerable to being hacked by crypto computing, because that Bitcoin has not moved. If you see those addresses, the Bitcoin is still there. Okay, just one more question which was there. Saikiran is asking, does Bitcoin raise its end of USD and hence China raise a superpower in stepping into the shoes of the US? Yes. See, actually, that is what I was trying to imply when I said that if Yanet, if the US Treasury Secretary talks about Bitcoin inefficiency and the next day the Fed network goes down. So some people have said that China's aim is to control. See, with their version of digital yuan, they said that all the countries which are being affected by their BRI project, their Belt Road Initiative project, which is passing through above India, through our POK, through our Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Their idea was that they wanted to reduce their dependence on the Indian Ocean. See, today, China's trade happens through the Indian Ocean. Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal, India and the US are watching that very carefully. So China wants to deleverage its risks and move away from the Indian Ocean. That is the reason why they are looking at the Belt and Road Initiative. So their objective is, yes, they want to obviously control the emergence of the US, and the US response by way of a digital dollar is really is the answer in that sense. Ravi has clarified that yes, he meant gold bonds with respect to purity issue, no problems and valuation with jewelry. Yes, Ravi, you are right. If the government is assuring you that the gold bonds have a certain purity, they will look into it. Pradeep has asked a very interesting question, which I wanted to actually raise in my presentation also when I spoke about the ban on cryptocurrencies. Pradeep says, my 16-year-old nephew has just started learning about investments. What would you advise about cryptos to these youngsters who are just learning about investments? He says, why should he invest in stocks when cryptos give such returns? I was talking to my nephew last night. His son, who's 10-year-old, in the lockdown, he did two things. He created an Instagram account for himself and he started cooking. He became a chef and he started delivering food in the neighborhood. And this is a 10-year-old, right? So every morning he'll get up, he will post his, he will cook something, he'll put it on his Instagram account and he will pick up orders. Youngsters today are really at a level at which they can understand about these technologies much more better than us. So yes, what I would do is, when he says that why should he invest in stocks when cryptos give such returns, as long as his time frame for investing, is a period of, the Japanese say that you should not invest in the stock market unless your time frame is more than 10 years. I would say the same thing about crypto. You need to make sure that your time frame is good and you are investing in the right crypto. Don't get into many of these other coins. There are also scams which have come through these, what we call as ICOs, initial coin offerings. So one has to stick to the tried and tested, cryptocurrencies. And my advice to anybody, youngsters, would be to just keep learning. This is a field in which all of us learn all the time. Okay. There's a question which somebody has asked. If one loses their private key, will they lose access to their Bitcoins? Yes. As we said in the last presentation, yes. If you lose your private key, nothing can be done. There are people today who have lost Bitcoins worth. There is a guy in the US, his hard disk has only 3 access. So he's already accessed it once. And he holds Bitcoin worth $300 million, in that hard disk. He's not able to access the hard disk. So yes, it is a technology which needs care. It's not something which is easily utilized. One has to learn about it. But the answer is yes. If you lose your private key, you are out of luck. Nothing can come back. You can't get your cryptos back. Okay. Any other questions?
Hi, this is Adi from Singapore. I have a question for Rehan. Just from your point of view in Canada and basically sitting in North America, how do you view this ban which countries are looking to carry out, national bans being carried out on cryptocurrencies? I mean, is it something as a ridiculous something? I mean, from your industry point of view, is it a ridiculous thing or is it something which could be carried out?
Um, for me, I think it really depends on the country we're talking about. Like, for example, if you're discussing India's view on the ban, I feel India is afraid of what cryptocurrency can provide to the population, the potential for it. They're even afraid because this is more of a revolution in the mind rather than actual asset or something like that. Because it all tends to financial freedom, financial equality, financial opportunities. Like, for example, you have the guy on the street who has the same opportunity as the guy in the room now. And this is a financial thing that not a lot of people used to have. So with the ban that India might put up, I think what Mahesh sir is saying might come true, that they might actually overturn the ban or there will be a legal protest against this ban. But from like the North American side, any country that's banning the cryptocurrency, you already know that that country is afraid of what it can provide to its people. For example, Venezuela, they're on sanctions and they purely run on the cryptocurrency. They trade, they have people with these cell phones, flip phones with no barely any screen, and they can access Bitcoin on a wallet, and they can have a wallet on a little cell phone. So I personally feel it just shows a lot about a country that decides to ban it, and then they might overturn it because of the legal processions. But in the end, it is just shows the country, I feel, is afraid of the opportunities that the people can provide. Especially India is a big population; they have to be able to control it, right? So they need proper set rules and regulations to come out with that. So it really depends on which country we discuss.
Okay, thanks, Rehan. Yeah.
I just add a point. There was an interview which was sent to me of Mr. Ajay Bhushan Pandey. I think he's one of the most reputed Government of India secretaries. And his main concern was the sovereign function of printing of money. He said, look, this is something which a sovereign is supposed to do. No government in the world will allow money printing to happen or money creation to happen, which is outside their control. So this was one point which was which he made. If anyone is interested, I can share the I can share the link of the interview. There's one more question I got. Since blockchain is growing exponentially, can current computing power handle it? Yes, the answer is yes, in the sense that today the computing powers which are available both via individual computers and as well as via the cloud is something which is, it's almost like infinite memories, infinite storage, infinite network capacity. Look at India, for instance. In last 2 years, more than 300 million or 400 million Indians have gone online on their phone, using their phone. The bandwidth which my boys in the house, they consume more bandwidth than I can. They watch movies, they watch TV, they watch cricket. So it's, the computing power is not really a constraint as of now. Kalpana has asked a question. Mahesh, can Indians actually spend Bitcoins just like credit cards, like for restaurants, hotels, gold, jewelries? Kalpana, unfortunately, not in India. You can do so overseas. As Rehan had mentioned in his last presentation, that, in Canada, people use it over there. As I mentioned in my example, Elon Musk has started. As Rehan mentioned, MasterCard has started. There are many such. PayPal has allowed all their merchants to spend bitcoins. So hopefully, once the dust settles, see, there's actually one more good suggestion which I forgot to mention. What some of the people have told the government of India is that since there is a limit of 250,000 US dollars which every Indian can send abroad, include Bitcoin in this limit. Today every Indian can send up to $250,000 outside every year for legitimate purposes, for education, for gifts, so and so. So people have, a lot of experts have told the government include Bitcoin in this limit, so at least then you can keep a track. There is a question I got, why cryptocurrency? Why not just strengthen current payment systems? See, the current payment systems are centralized. They are not decentralized. So today the advantage of a cryptocurrency is that the crypto part of it, which generates the currency, is guaranteed by a consensus algorithm, which ensures that you are not able to create, you are not able to create blocks which are hanging in midair. You are able to, every block which is getting created points to the previous block. So today, if you are on block number 70, it points to block number 69,999, which points back to 69,998, going all the way to 0. So it is a ledger. It is a double accounting ledger, which is totally live on the internet, which current payment systems are not. Look at the scams which have happened in India. Harshad Mehta scam. Harshad Mehta scam. Today he was able to create fictitious ledger entries using the State Bank of India systems, which were not linked. He did this 3 decades back. Look at these scams which happened, last 1 year. So many companies have given fake set of accounts to their banks. Today, let's say if government says from tomorrow, my accounting systems have to be on a Bitcoin, on a blockchain network, the government will have the ability to audit the network. Okay. So I hope I've answered that question in terms of the benefits of why, or the disadvantages of current payment systems. Last, one question which Rajesh asked, cryptocurrency is totally dependent on electricity and internet. Isn't it a big risk in case there's an outage? Yes, obviously it is a risk because these two are the resources, but you'll be surprised. Pakistan as a country, I was in Lahore about 7 years back, and we don't realize how fortunate we are in India. Lahore, as one of Pakistan's biggest cities, used to have 4 hours of outage every day. 4 hours on, 4 hours off, 4 hours on, 4 hours off. Can you imagine last 2 weeks back, one of Pakistan's KP province, they have legalized Bitcoin mining, and they said no, we'll go and do it, and if required, we'll provide a dedicated power facility. Just one point, Bitcoin mining today uses a huge percentage of renewables. That's the reason why I was asking Rehan earlier whether areas which are near mountainous regions and which are near hydro power sources, a lot of renewables is being used for Bitcoin mining, because see, treasuries or companies who are investing in Bitcoin need to have environmental concerns also. So yes, it is a risk, but it's a risk like all of us today. If I don't have internet and if I don't have electricity in my house, what do I do? The advantage with what happens with blockchain is, because the blockchain network has to compulsory link to the previous block. Even if there is a breakdown, let's say there is a simultaneous breakdown of electricity and internet all over the world at the same time for next 10 minutes. So what will happen? What happens is that, the last block which was successfully mined, that becomes the block which is available for others to start creating blocks around it. Okay. Okay, any more questions? We are 10 minutes past our time. So I'm open. Any more questions? Anyone wants to ask any questions? Any suggestions you have for future sessions? Okay, so shall we call it a day?
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you all for joining. And
Thanks, Mahesh. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Rian. Bye.
We can hang around for some time. Yes, thank you, Rajesh. Thank you, Kamal, for joining. Thank you, Ravi.
Thanks, Mahesh and Rehan.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you, Mahesh. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, so I will end the session, Rehan. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kamlesh Bhai. Thank you, Lakshmi. Thank you, PVS. I don't know who PVS is, but doesn't matter. Okay. Thanks, Rehan. Give my regards to
Sounds good.
Zishan and your dad too. Okay. Bye.
Will do. Take care. Take care.